Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we usually go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. However, today we have a special bonus episode from a Netflix original film in 2025. It's the Netflix mystery film called Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. This is directed by Rian Johnson and stars Daniel Craig, Josh O'Connor, Glenn Close, Josh Brolin, Mila Kunis, Jeremy Renner, Kerry Washington, Andrew Scott, Cailee Spaeny, Daryl McCormack, and Thomas Haden Church. I am Jesse, I am your host. Thank you for joining me today for this special bonus episode. This is another episode in our special episodes through the month of December for 2025, where we've been giving a few extra film coverages, that word, I'm so tired at this time of the year, but some extra coverage on some films as a special gift to our listeners. You can probably hear the exhaustion in my voice. This is, I'm putting this out early, but I've recorded a lot more in the future, so I can have a little bit of time off over the Christmas break. Don't worry, we will still have episodes out all the way through every single week and we're in summer in Australia, so through the Christmas festive season as well as into January, but this will be the last episode I record for quite a while, so this is a little bit of a celebration and probably why there's a little bit of tiredness in my voice too. But we are here today to talk about the third film in the Knives Out trilogy so far. So if you haven't watched this film yet, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on, because I am going to spoil the film as we go. And in saying that, we start with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one, it's about the death of a Monsignor, like a religious person, and this leads to a co-investigation between a priest, a private detective, and the police. There we go. So this has got a good story as to how it ended up on Netflix. Let's start off with the tagline. So the tagline for this film is "He works in mysterious ways." So that also ties in, obviously, with the undertone that this has to do with Wake Up Dead Man. It's the idea of resurrection. It's the idea of church and faith and things like that. It also had another tagline, and it's one hell of a murder. There we go. Tying in the idea of murder with hell, another religious idea. The logline on Netflix, when you open Netflix for this film, says, "A murder at a small town church presents Detective Benoit Blanc, Daniel Craig, with the holy grail of mysteries and a devilishly long suspect list." There we go. Then when you click on the film, Netflix says Detective Benoit Blanc teams up with an earnest young priest to investigate a perfectly impossible crime at a small town church with a dark history. There we go. This had the working title of Knives Out 3. What is the title around the world? So in Portuguese, it's called Dead or Alive. Cool. Chinese, it's called Blade Unsheathed, The Return of the Dead. Here we go, good one. In Hungarian, it's called Trapped, Wake Up Dead Man. In Russian, it's called Knives Out, Resurrection of the Dead. And in Vietnamese, it's called The Stabster, Awakening the Dead. I'm not sure the stabster is actually an English word, but that gives away a little bit about how the murder occurs through a stabbing. So here we go. This is a standalone sequel to Glass Onion from 2022, which was the sequel to the original Knives Out film. So this is the third film, and this is the second of these Knives Out films that is a Netflix original film. Before the release of the original Knives Out in 2019, Rian Johnson said that he would like to create sequels with Benoit Blanc investigating further mysteries, and already had an idea for a new film. We go to March 31 of 2021, where we go to the Netflix deal, where it was reported that they bought the rights for 2 future Knives Out sequels for over $400 million. That is a lot of money. So this film is the last one in the Netflix deal, which is interesting heading into a possible fourth film. Johnson said his key influences for this film were works of Edgar Allan Poe and John Dickson Carr, as well as elements of work of Agatha Christie, especially her novel And Then There Were None from 1939. Carr's The Hollow Man from 1935 is repeatedly referenced within this film. One of the key scenes in the film was influenced by Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. Johnson also drew from his own religious upbringing in evangelicalism, with Blanc reflecting his own mixed feelings on organized religion. However, Johnson chose to have the film focus on Catholicism for aesthetic reasons, admitting the churches he grew up in kind of looked like pottery barns and hence served as a poor visual basis for a film. We go to June of 2022, where Johnson revealed Knives Out 3 was a working title, with his intent being each film having a distinct title, citing the works of Agatha Christie as his inspiration for the films and the individual titles. In November of 2022, Johnson said he was preparing to work on writing the third film, and by January of 2023, he'd confirmed that he'd started writing the script for the third film, saying that it would be tonally and thematically different from the previous films. Johnson later stated that he stated that he had approved the subtitle of A Knives Out Mystery for the previous installments. He would like to rename the series and add a Benoit Blanc mystery as subtitle for future installments. In October of 2023, following the resolution of the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike, Johnson announced he had started working on the script for the third film. The filmmaker stated he had the premise planned and could begin writing again. The film's title, Wake Up Dead Man, comes from a phrase in the folk song Ain't No More Cane on the Brazos, though Johnson notes that it's also kind of derived from the title of the song of the same name by U2. Daniel Craig acknowledged interest in returning to the role early on during the project's development. Craig was paid $100 million for his involvement in the two Knives Out sequels. In May of 2024, more of the cast was announced, including Jeremy Renner. Renner's likeness had previously been used in Glass Onion, the second film, although he had not been featured otherwise. This role marks Renner's first major feature film production since his near-fatal snowplow accident in January of 2023. The following month, Josh Brolin and Thomas Haden Church joined the cast. Principal photography began on June the 10th, 2024 in London, and first look photos from the set revealed Craig's character Benoit Blanc with a noticeably different, longer hairstyle than in previous films. On June the 19th, 2024, Glenn Close revealed that she was hit really hard with COVID-19 and a respiratory virus, RSV, which was also revealed to have resulted in her being able to only participate in 2 days of filming by that point in time. Filming on the film was completed on the 17th of August. Church exteriors for the film, set in New York State, were actually shot at the Church of the Holy Innocents in High Beach, Epping Forest, 11 miles from the centre of London. Additional exterior footage was shot in September of 2024 in Cold Spring, New York, which served as the setting of Chimney Rock in the film. In October of 2025, Johnson stated that he had nothing planned for a fourth film in the series, though he did express a willingness to make another film as long as he and Daniel Craig have fun doing them and audiences enjoy them. He said he finds them challenging to make, especially in terms of developing new plots. On the 18th of November 2025, it was announced that Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig were starting to formulate ideas for a potential fourth film. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who some of us would know played a key role in one of the films that Johnson directed earlier in his career, Looper. He actually does a voiceover in this film that is a little bit of a guest appearance. He's the baseball announcer on the audio in the film. The crucifix that Glenn Close wears in the film was given to her by real life by her father, who got it at St. Peter's Basilica in Italy. The name of the devoutly religious character played by Glenn Close, Martha Delacroix, is obviously symbolic of her faith, because Martha is the name of a figure in the New Testament, one of two sisters of Lazarus whom Jesus resurrected from death, and de la Croix in French, which means of the cross. Lindsay Lohan and Tom Hardy were initially in talks to star, and these were the parts for Mila Kunis and Jeremy Renner who took them. Writer-director Rian Johnson made waves online when promoting the first film in 2019 when he said that if a villain in a film, if they're a villain, they can't use an Apple phone. So this film seemingly shows that the rule only applies to phones and not all Apple products, because Dr. Nat, who is a villain in this film, actually uses his Apple Watch Ultra in this film. So there you go. Interesting little facts about the film. This did premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival on the 6th of September 2025. It played a variety of other festivals before it had a limited theatrical release from the 26th of November 2025, and it hit Netflix worldwide on the 12th of December 2025. Apparently it made $2.5 million when it did play in theaters. We've got to take that with a grain of salt, because Netflix don't necessarily always release or relay their actual takings at the box office. It did cost $151 million to make, which is a lot of money for a film that is not a big budget sort of superhero film. And so far in the award season, it's had 1 win and a further 24 nominations across a variety of awards, and I would say it will probably get a few more coming up. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? So on Rotten Tomatoes, this sits at 92%. That's on 290 critic reviews, which is certified fresh, super positive. The audience, even higher, 94%. That's on more than 1,000 ratings, and this is verified on Rotten Tomatoes too. So super positive there. Even on IMDb, it sits at a 7.5 out of 10, almost unheard of on 66,000 ratings. Letterboxd, it sits at a 3.9 out of 5 on 691,000 ratings. That's huge. That is so big in only being on Netflix for a bit over a week, and it's been logged by 775,000 people. Huge numbers so far. Metacritic, their traffic light system of red, yellow, and green. This sits in green for critics. It sits at 80 out of 100 on 59 reviews, so very positive. And the same for audiences. Sits at a 7.3 out of 10 on 156 reviews. Green. Wow. Big numbers. What are my early thoughts on this film? I know you're all waiting to hear. I'm a huge fan of the Knives Out films. I remember seeing the first one at an open air rooftop cinema and being blown away. And then when the second one came out, it was a Netflix original film, but I went out of my way to go and see it in a cinema before it hit Netflix. So the excitement for this one for me was through the roof. And I think it was completely different from what I expected. It's probably a little bit less extravagant, and on reflection, it's probably amazing that while the formula is still followed, it still felt new. So super positive from me on this one again, which I'm happy about. Here we go. The characters, Benoit Blanc. This is our detective played by Daniel Craig. This is his role where I'll talk about it a bit later, but he's sent to this parish to solve this unsolvable murder, and he's got a little bit of a different hairstyle this time around. Still got that great southern accent, still got great dialogue, loves his stage music, and wants to solve a crime. So not much has changed there. And he pairs himself in this film with Reverend Judd Duplicity. This is a young priest who's been sent to a troubled parish after he punches a deacon in the face, I guess, and now he has to work with an even more insufferable priest who pushes him to his limits. But this also makes him the prime suspect for the murder, and Judd's got to deal with his own regrets, including killing a man in a boxing ring and trying to work out the anger that led to that. But he has this clear mission to help and care for people, and he takes this seriously, and that's the good deeds in this character, which is almost the opposite to the Monsignor Jefferson Wicks that he's sent to spend time with. This is a man of anger, and he preaches shame and guilt and the opposite of what a preacher should do. And this is where that conflict with Judd comes apart and comes to fruition, I guess, is the way of putting it. Martha Delacroix, I mentioned her before in the notes, but this is Wicks's loyal servant, and she's been a part of the church since she was a little girl, and she does everything for the church. Her life is the church, including the books, the donations, the files, the laundry, the food, the organ, all that sort of stuff. I'm trying not to say too much about their suspicions in the crime as well. Geraldine Scott, that's Mila Kunis. She rocks up as the police chief. She's got some good lines throughout, but the rest of the suspects, I guess, in the town, we've got Dr. Nat Sharp, who's the town's doctor. His wife's left him, taken the kids. He's turned to alcohol, so he's struggling. Vera is a lawyer who's been dumped with her half-brother called Cy. She resents this, but she's doing it for her father and for the church and to be a good person, I guess. And she also represents, she represents the church and Wicks as their lawyers as well. Lee Ross is a former best-selling author who's lost his way and focuses on internet conspiracies and writing a book about Wicks as well. We've got Simone. Simone is a former concert cellist who's in a wheelchair. She's become disabled and has put her life savings and faith into Wicks and the church in the hope of him healing her. And the last one, I guess, is Cy. Cy, I mentioned before, Vera's adoptive son. He wants to be a politician. He thinks creating rage bait online is going to help this. And there's a bit of a reveal that, I've said spoilers, but there's a reveal that he's actually the son of Wicks, and that leads the plot along as well. The other character, Samson, he's the groundskeeper. He has a relationship with Martha. He seems like the most innocent person in this film almost, and he's very devout to Wicks for saving him from alcoholism. So he'll do whatever he says, and he'll do whatever Martha says too. The director, Rian Johnson, I've already said before, he directed Looper, he directed the Star Wars film The Last Jedi, as well as the Knives Out films, and obviously is a well-respected director and writer. Let's talk about some scenes. What are the scenes that I liked? What are the scenes that I didn't like in this film? So, things that I liked. One of the opening shots was the inside of the church. There's this big stain on the wall of where the crucifix was missing, and this just led me with so many questions as to why it was missing, where was it, what happened to it, and obviously, is it going to be replaced? And these were all answered throughout, and I think that's a really, and obviously one of the closing shot of the film is the crucifix replaced, and the importance of that as well. So I really liked that. Wicks, his masturbation confessions, including finishing on a Catholic Chronicle magazine. Very funny, especially the follow-up, like he goes to shake Judd's hand after telling the story, and then Judd goes to his room to see a copy of the magazine on his bedside table. The mind games from this Wicks guy, very, very clever, well done. Cy, he talks about his failed political campaign, and he talks about trying race, gender, and he makes this huge big list of all the things he tried and he failed. Very funny. Judd, he starts a prayer group because he's realised that Wicks is not a great guy. He wants to connect with the parishioners in the church, and the cast all playing off the idea of being worried if Wicks finds out that they're there without him. I thought that was super well done. Martha goes to confession because it's pretty much because Judd challenges her to go and confess to Wicks, so she does it, and she comes out of the confession booth a bit flustered, and he comes out panting. It was very good. It was a great red herring, really, because there's the reveal is that there was nothing actually happening in there, but there's this assumption that there was something sexual happening there. That was well done. Lee, this writer. There's just a quick shot of how lost the guy is because he's built a moat around his house. He's that paranoid. I thought that was funny. Benoit Blanc, he first walks into the church and his chat with Judd about faith, storytelling, lies. It was just such great dialogue. Geraldine the cop, she walks in and sees Blanc and she's like, "Were you on The View?" I laughed at that. The autopsy room with Wicks's body and it's all wiggly and they flip him over and Judd runs out. He's so grossed out. That was humorous. Blanc says, "The real killer's out there. We need to find him and nail him." And then he says, "Sorry," because obviously this is a Jesus reference about nailing to a priest. That was good. Some other good lines. Benoit Blanc asks who chose the book club books because they're all crime murder ones, and the response was Oprah. That was funny. The parishioners are talking about the crime and if there's going to be a documentary, and it's like there'll be idiot versions of us on Netflix. Great self-reference. Wicks's rant about destroying each and every one of his parishioners in that room, that was wild. Another line is Cy is talking to Wicks, we can be a father-son combination, I can be president, we can build an empire, a bit like Star Wars, the rebels. That was funny. Judd calls this a Louise lady at the forklift hire company, and his urgency about needing to understand who opened the crypt and her newness to the job and her slow responses was funny. But then it ties in a really nice moment where she talks about illness in her family, and she'd love for him to have a prayer with her. It was just a really nice moment where it brought Judd back to his reality and his calling, and he didn't rush that one little bit and took his time. I thought that was really nice. Wicks says that when there's this revelation that Wicks is reborn or resurrected, and I think it was Geraldine, the police officer, says Wicks was 100% dead, right? You can't raise the dead unless it's some Scooby-Doo shit. And then Benoit Blanc is like Scooby-Dooby-Doo or something like that. It was just great. Judd trying to confess to the killing in the church, and then Blanc's on the organ and he starts playing Phantom of the Opera to try and interrupt him and cut him off, and he's like, "Stop talking." That was funny. And finally Martha drops the jewel and she passes away, and it's just Benoit Blanc and Judd there, and Judd's like, "Shit," and Blanc's like puts his hands up and walks away. I just thought it was well timed. The two of them together was really good. There's nothing that I didn't like in this one, to be honest. The themes, the ideas, I'm not going to go into these in detail because I don't want to, I feel like if I just say what that's saying, you can interpret this film yourself, and I love that about this film. The idea of faith versus logic, the idea of greed versus sacrifice, the idea of anger versus hope, the idea that fighting isn't going to save anyone, and the idea of welcoming people will save. I liked that. The idea of shrinking parishes and parishioners and followers of faith, and those that exploit faith for their own benefit are pushing people away, and that idea of fairy tales and stories. But there is purpose behind these religious stories too. And even those symbols of faith, the visual symbols like Eve's apple, the crucifix, forgiveness, these are all great things that tie into the overall story of this film too. What else did I take away? Josh O'Connor as Judd, he just blew me away. I've got to say, he was amazing. I was so impressed. He was in Challenges. I can't remember being a huge fan of him in that, but in this film, I was so impressed. He held his ground so well. Some questions, some pondering, some thoughts. This just was a random one. There's at the start of the film, the crypt that's in the church grounds. There's all this penis and testicle graffiti all over the crypt. Just wondering who did it. Was there an answer as to who did that and why, or was that just a funny? I'm sure there's some answer somewhere. And then the idea that this is a third film in a series, and Blanc doesn't rock up on the screen until 40 minutes in. It's just wild that there's such faith, I guess, in the character Judd and Josh O'Connor as well. I just thought that was a great takeaway. Other than that, I'm sure you've had enough of listening to me. I'm ready to wrap this one up. We give the films a rating out of 5 on this show. I've got to talk about it as a series too. I think it's hard to pick a favorite of these films because they're all so well written and put together and cast. And this one does feel different, but it's still extremely good and does what these films do so well, which is highlighting flaws in current society and the commentary in this, I feel like, throughout. So I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5. Solid for me. We're on socials. We have X, formerly known as Twitter. We've got Facebook and we have Instagram. Give us a follow. Give us a like if you can. The question I wanted to put on socials for this episode is the idea of Martha, the jewel in the film. Why didn't Martha put the jewel in the acid bath? She obviously put some bodies in the acid bath, but why didn't she put the jewel in there too if she was so dead set on ensuring that evil never got this fortune? It's interesting. Is this to highlight that maybe she's not as good a servant as she preaches throughout the film because she has just killed and she has just murdered, and does she have some of this temptation because it's in her possession? But in saying that, she did take poison, and she knew and understood that she wasn't going to be able to use the wealth of this jewel. So what was the point? Was it in her that she needed to return it to the church because that's where it needed to go, and she was actually a good servant, and she does do a confession and she's resolved of her sins at the end of the film, and part of resolving of that is that the final drop from her hand is the jewel and she gives it back, and then she is a good character. I'm not sure. I'm intrigued. Let me know what you think. That's a pretty big question. We do have a huge back catalogue of Netflix original films. We've got 480 plus episodes. Give us a search, have a look, see if there's something else. If you've enjoyed listening to this, you might like another episode too. But for me, this is a bit of a pause. I'm getting ready for the Christmas season, so I hope you are too. Obviously, we've got a few extra episodes coming up in the lead up to Christmas. Have a download, have a listen, enjoy your break, enjoy, especially if you're in Australia, enjoy your summer, and listen out over the next few weeks for some more episodes on the Flix Forum podcast.